We are all aware of the unprecedented government response to the SARS-CoV-2 virus, aka COVID-19. Since day one, this virus has been treated differently. Whether we go back to December, when the Chinese used it to shut down the freedom protest in Hong Kong, whether it is the secret underground videos leaked from China in January that showed them sealing off entire apartment complexes and the rumors of them killing the infected, or whether it's in the USA in March, when they handed out essential employee cards and governors and mayors mandated lockdowns and arbitrarily closed businesses. The information available about the novel coronavirus has and continues to change every day. We have been told to wear masks and not to wear masks. We've been told that the virus lives on surfaces for days, and then months later we were told that surface transmission is extremely rare. Many of us have been asking, what makes this virus so different? Why has the government responded the way that it has? I've spent the last few months trying to find someone that can tell me the answers to these questions, to no avail. When the virus outbreak first hit the US, we were shown models. Horrific and terrifying models. These models predicted that within just a couple of months, the US would experience as many as 2 million deaths. They also stated that a large portion of these deaths would be due to hospital overcrowding and not directly caused by the virus. Well, that is something that is definitely scary, and it's also unprecedented. The government's request? Shut down for 2 weeks unless you're considered essential. On the surface, this request seems reasonable. Most companies could survive a 2-week shutdown if it meant serving the greater good of making sure we all had access to the health care we might need. With the virus being so new, there was little to no evidence against such a proposal, and even if there would have been, by the time you formulated and presented the case, 2 weeks would have been long over with. Now, before we move any further, it's important to clarify something about flattening the curve. Flattening the curve was never intended to prevent deaths caused directly from COVID-19. Flattening the curve, in a mathematical sense, doesn't change the area below the curve. The number of infections, the deaths, death rate, etc. It just delays them. The only thing flattening the curve was ever intended to accomplish was to give the U.S. time to manufacture or purchase additional PPE and to give us time to prepare enough hospital beds for what we were told was the inevitable overcrowding of hospitals. To that point, it's also important to note that hospitals, in large, operate as close to full capacity as possible for the sake of profits, and overcrowding of hospitals has never been used as justification to close down any business based solely on its industry. Although the Spanish flu had some localities shut down places of amusement, the reason cited had nothing to do with hospital overcrowding. Now, back to the COVID-19 response. Once the 2-week shutdown was over, many states began to slowly lift lockdowns. Keep in mind that this was not something that the people voted on prior to, and it was not consistent across the country. Also note that the 2-week shutdown was not mandated by the federal government, but just strongly suggested. At this time, testing was still extremely limited. In my town, you were only tested if you were showing symptoms. This lasted until about day 45 of the 15 days of flattening the curve. Since then, testing has increased, as has nearly every other metric associated with COVID-19. Well, almost every one. It seems the death rate is now nowhere near the 10 times deadlier than the flu claims that were so strongly preached at the beginning of this pandemic. As many as half of the people diagnosed exhibit no symptoms, and those dying with 0 pre-existing health conditions is close to 1% of total deaths. Now, I've asked these next questions multiple times to multiple mayors, governors, state officials via Twitter, Parler, Facebook, Instagram, etc., but I've yet to get a response from anyone with any authority. I would like to know what metrics are and have been used to award the government the powers that they are using now to impose their COVID-19 policies, and why have they not taken any of these actions before? Is it the death rate of COVID-19? Is it the form of transmission? Is it the fact that we just discovered it? Is it the contagiousness of the virus? Is it the long-term effects on the body? Has this virus been militarized? Is it a man-made virus? Or do COVID deaths somehow count more than other deaths? Is it the lack of a vaccine? Can anyone tell me the exact metrics that are being used to justify this reaction by the government? Are these characteristics, if COVID-19 meets them, unique to COVID-19? If not, what makes this outbreak so special? If other health issues have met these standards in the past, or if they do in the future and the government fails to act, then do they hold any liability for the deaths caused by those ailments? These questions are important so that some form of a test can be formed and created so that we can apply it to all future ailments. Without a test, there's no accountability or protection from arbitrary future shutdowns. There's also no way for businesses to assess and to mitigate the future risks associated with these shutdowns. Now, I find it important for all of us to ask these questions of our representatives. The only answers anyone can ever seem to give are ones like, well, it's worse than the flu, or it's more than a seasonal flu, or it's way more deadly. Do you see how many lives have been lost? Oh, and let's not forget the famous ad hominem fallacy of, you just don't care about anyone but yourself, grandma killer. No one, especially in the government, has been able to clearly and articulately define the exact metrics used to differentiate COVID-19 from other ailments. They can't tell me what metrics a future virus or illness would have to meet to warrant the same response. The reason for this? Well, if they define metrics, then they have to make sure that COVID-19 stays within those metrics, or they lose all of their power and face backlash for all of the businesses that they have bankrupted and infringements on personal liberty that they have pushed, not to mention all the money that they've spent on propaganda during this pandemic. Notice this question is nonpartisan. I don't say that the government doesn't have the right or the power to create mandates and issue lockdowns. And regardless of anyone's personal feelings about COVID-19, my question is fairly straightforward. If the government has these powers, and if they have chosen not to employ them in the past, not only should they be able to give us the exact metrics used to determine such a unique response is not only necessary, but their obligation, they should also be able to clearly articulate how COVID-19 meets these metrics. If they can't, it's because they haven't been able to define the metrics, which is what I believe to be the case. They are in a catch-22. If they define metrics that include any other outbreaks or ailments, then they may find themselves being held liable in court for not taking these actions in the past, and they may also be forced to employ these lockdowns in the future, such as a bad flu season, and we all know how that could be a political nightmare for a candidate seeking re-election. So, I'm going to use this opportunity to ask once again, mayors, governors, state representatives, senators, and President Trump, can anyone please give me the exact metrics that we are using to award these unprecedented broad powers to the government? Business owners, workers, and the rest of us citizens deserve to know exactly what standards must be met by an illness to allow such interference in our daily lives. These lockdowns have taken the lives of thousands of us through suicide, drug overdoses, abuse, misdiagnosed illnesses, and more. If we are to ever allow these lockdowns again, we demand to know exactly where the goalposts are, especially since you have failed to clearly define them after 5 months. If you know a state or local official that can answer these questions and other related questions, please send this video to them. If you agree that we the people deserve an answer to these questions, among others, then please share this video. Ask these questions on Twitter, Facebook, Parler, Instagram, by phone, and email. If you are like me and you feel that these lockdowns and mandates are overreach, then please share this video. The more we ask, the more pressure they will be under to give us an answer. Once the metrics are clearly defined, then, and only then, will we be able to move forward with a debate. At the current moment, with the goalpost being unique to each individual city, county, or state, it's hard to formulate any argument coherent enough to take to court. Be sure to click the like button and to drop your thoughts in the comments section below. Check out ChaseMatheson.com for some funny t-shirts. And as always, thanks for watching.